guys, how's it going? It's Al. Week 17 on DraftKings kicks off in like less than 2 days. We're gonna go over everything that there is. It's kind of a fantasy football AMA, if you will, that we run.
He's a legend.
Every single Friday on Twitch. As you can see, another $150 donation from Justin L. Says, thanks for the fantasy advice, least I can do for a great cause. We just crossed the $50,000 mark, which means that I owe another $10,000 match on our charity fundraiser that we've been running for No Kid Hungry this season. If we raise $10,000 more from the community, I will owe another $10,000 match from me. So like, we'll see if we can get there in the next 36 hours. There's the $10,000 match from me for $50,000. I'm going to take questions for the next 45 minutes from Twitch chat. We're going to bring them in here in just a second and go over everything that there is to talk about. Cash game lineups, tournament lineups. We'll build something on underdog fantasy. We'll go over all of it. So let's go.
He's a legend.
Before I bring in the chat, I wanted to let you know about the Smiz Gang Listener League. It's up once again. It's 3,000 entries, $10 to enter, 3 max. The only way you can find this is go to smizzle.tv/links. It does not exist in the lobby because it's the best tournament that is out there on DraftKings. And they wouldn't want you to just have everybody be able to jump into a no-rake tournament that's 3 max, limited entry with a kind of a small field. So go to smizzle.tv/links, click on the link to that. I will shout out the top 10 finishers on the recap video over on the Fantasy Football channel that comes out on Monday and goes over everything that I did. So make sure that you get in there today. The best tournament on DraftKings. Let's bring in the chat, talk about all the things. You do great things for people. Look, I try to breed the sense of community from our viewers, whether it's the live viewers on Twitch, people in our Discord, which you should be in, by the way. If you're a channel member, you get access to the VIP rooms over in Discord to talk about every sport with our entire community. So like, it's $5 a month and it gives you this massive add-on. So like to the value there by getting a part of the Discord. So go do that. Thank you. So like, the reason I do charitable things publicly is to try and encourage other people to do charitable things as well. That's all. So what questions do we have? Cowboys struggled against the Texans at home. The Texans are horrible as another point. Yeah, so we were talking before we started the recording. We were talking about how no teams just quit because individually players are not going to put out bad tape. So like, it's week 17, we're going to have week 18. You need to stop the narrative going into these games that this team isn't going to play hard, because the individuals are most certainly going to play hard. And the gap between the 5th best team in the league and 25th best team in the league in terms of talent and everything else is not all that wide. So when you have teams like the Titans last night, who are playing with their 3rd string quarterback starting his first game after being on the team for 8 days, Baker Mayfield, same situation for the Rams like a few weeks ago. These teams do not play like, oh, I'm just going to mail it in. No, because individually that can cost them hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars. So we're at that point in the season. So break that narrative in your own mind that teams are not going to play hard. So like, what should we do? Let's start with cash game. Okay, let's do that. Let's start with like where the cash games are this week. I think that quarterback is going to be extremely straightforward in cash games. We have one game. So like looking at Vegas totals, right? We have one game that has a higher total than absolutely everything else. This game, Bears against the Lions, is 52. We had a similar situation a few weeks ago where the total was like 53 and no other game was within 6 points on total. 40, 45, 39, 43, 42 and a half, 41, 40 and a half, 42. It's a 13 game slate and nothing's above 45. Green Bay and Minnesota, 48. 49 and a half is not on the slate. So we have another situation now where this is the massively highest total, the Bears against the Lions, and it's going up. Another game trending up is Arizona and Atlanta, with both team totals going up a little bit, the spread staying the same, somewhat competitive. We're looking also for games that have a total, implied team totals of 24 and above when we're looking at quarterbacks. The Chiefs are always in this range. Lions at 29, Cowboys off the slate were 27. San Francisco 25, Green Bay 25. In top stacks, we talked about Aaron Rodgers and his viability. Bills not on the slate. Chargers 24, 24, 24. So taking a look back here, the most viable cash game quarterback is going to be Jared Goff. I think that he is going to be the chalky cash game guy. Looking at what he does at home this year, 23.1 points, playing in a dome, weather controlled, end of December, first day of January actually for their game. And it's been good. Now look, can he get pipped a little bit, and like he's not going to contribute much, if anything, with his legs, but you are going to get a situation where he should throw for, for 2 touchdowns in this game. Granted, yeah, they could run for 3 or 4, or the defense could score. But like that you have to take that chance, considering that the running quarterbacks on the slate or Patrick Mahomes cost so much. 8,500, 83 if Jalen Hurts runs. Fields is 79 if he runs the football with his shoulder, or anywhere near as much. So all these quarterbacks that have that upside are way up here, and everybody else has question marks. So the highest implied team total, Jared Goff, is more than likely your cash game quarterback. There are a lot of running backs, and I don't think that any of them are really, really, really going to be chalk. I kind of have to say it that way because there's just so many that are out there. The one who looks like he is going to be most likely chalk-ish would be Travis Etienne Jr. going up against Houston. The other one that I think is a solid play, but I'm not sure that he's going to pop in optimals, but his percentage isn't going to line up with what chalk should be. It's going to be James Conner just on volume alone. This is absurd. He's getting the old Christian McCaffrey workload, meaning that he's getting 95% plus of the running back snaps and touches on his team for the last 4 weeks. This sort of volume cannot be ignored, especially against a team like Atlanta, who allows so many trips to the red zone and so bad at stopping opponents, like second most trips in the league to the red zone, and they're inefficient at red zone defense. So James Conner has touchdown upside, has tons of volume, and on his same team, Greg Dortch is 3K, while I'm not expecting 11 targets in this situation. And I believe that Colt McCoy is starting this week, right? He is going to be the starting quarterback this week. Cleared concussion protocol. If you look at the games where Colt McCoy started, Mike Clay on the Fantasy Focus podcast on the CSS DFS edition that came out on Thursday with me and Mike and Squirrel, highlighted the fact that in the games that McCoy has played for Atlanta this year, whoever the slot receiver has been has led the team in terms of target market share. Okay. And right now we believe that that's going to be Dortch. So Dortch is also in play at his price. And then you can kind of do whatever else you want, right? You got 5,500 a defense. I'm not a big fan of chalky defenses, but like this seems stupid. 2,900 for the San Francisco 49ers defense against Jarrett Stidham, which leaves you 6,200 remaining for absolutely everything else on this team. The other chalky play that I think is going to be extremely popular is Ingram at 4,400, who seems massively mispriced, averaging 22 fantasy points per game on DraftKings over the last 4 games, and then has a game against Houston again. He scored 13 against them last time on 10 targets. They're running this offense through this guy. I'm glad that looking back that I was very right about it. This is not a bad frame for a cash game. If you don't want to Jacksonville Jaguars, fine. If you don't want to Arizona Cardinals, I get it. But basically, it feels like this is kind of where we're starting with cash games this week. Tons of running back. Yeah, there's so many. Season's almost over. No! It's weird. Is Lenny a cash game play against Carolina? I think he's a low-end cash game running back this week. I think the high-end cash game running backs are guys like Travis Etienne Jr., Saquon Barkley. I have my list on this other screen. Christian McCaffrey this week is also a solid cash game play at running back. James Conner, Ramondre Stevenson. Those are basically the guys. Who are my favorite value wide receivers under 4,500? I don't think there are that many. My favorite is Dortch. Dortch, Elijah Moore, Rashid Shaheed. That name is a tongue twister. Rubber baby buggy bumpers. Rashid Shaheed. There's not all that much down there, and it's not really needed because kind of above that range, like just above that range, we have a lot of wide receivers that are getting a ton of targets. So Christian Watson didn't practice on Thursday, monitored Friday practice report, see if he goes. If he goes under 6K against Minnesota, we want to play players against Minnesota. We want to do that. DJ Moore, 5,700, solid volume for under 6K. Juju Smith-Schuster. Problem is the matchup. Denver is very tough on the outside with Patrick Surtain. Marquise Brown has done a good job recently, and you have ceiling, although a very low floor. Lazard becomes a massive value in the case that Christian Watson does not go at 5,400. Don't really love Thielen. Don't really love Palmer. Jacoby Myers is fine. Really bad cornerback play for Miami so far this year. Love Drake London on the cover. I don't think that you need to stack him, but I do think that it's very easy to use him as a secondary stack alongside Dortch or alongside James Conner. or if you want, as a super value secondary stack in tournaments, he has been peppered. 32 targets over the last 3 weeks, no touchdowns. It is, I understand that they're a running team, but they also throw the ball, right? And when they throw the ball, Drake London is clearly their most talented pass catcher outside him and Kyle Pitts, who's out for the season. So when they throw it, quarterbacks tend to throw it to the guy who's open. And Drake London is the best player on that team at getting separation and earning targets from his quarterback. So he continually gets them. Now, you cannot be 6'4", 215, 220 pounds, as talented as getting separation and as big as you are on a team with a solid team total this week, get targeted 32 times in 3 weeks, catch 6 or more balls every week, and not score touchdowns. It is physically impossible for that to happen. Sorry, it's mathematically impossible. Like he is trending towards needing regression in a positive way. So if he continues to get this amount of targets and he continues to make this amount of catches, he is going to find the end zone sooner rather than later. It doesn't mean he's scoring. I'm not guaranteeing a touchdown this week, but it is certainly a thing. Dobbs at 4,700. So like, you see how many guys are in that range? Jahan Dotson has been very good going up against Cleveland this week with 24 targets the last 3 weeks and a touchdown in every one. Another guy who earns targets week in, week out. So like, asking me for sub 4,500 wide receivers, like, sure, there's guys down here, but like, they're all super high variance players. Moore, Richie James Jr., DJ Chark, I'd probably only use in a stack, not as a one-off. Hodgins happened to have a good game last week. So did Richie James, 22.9 for him. Richie James had 17. There's nobody else to catch the ball, and Indianapolis is really bad. So if you wanted to pivot off of Saquon Barkley chalk and go with a Jones double stack, that's how you'd get there. I still can't say it. Rashid Shaheed, again, good ceiling, low floor. Look at the difference in volume. 4,000, 3, 4, 4, 5. You could end up with like a 6-point day out of him. It is going to be very hard for Drake London getting the amount of volume he's getting to get you a 6-point day. So like, I feel like there's enough running backs under 7K, like a lot of them, like 12. And I feel like there's enough value at wide receiver in the mid-range, 4,000 to 6,000, without even looking up here at guys who may be underpriced, right? Or a good value plus ceiling for tournaments, that I don't think that we really need to dig super deep outside of somebody like Dortch. Should not be the bare minimum. Dortch shouldn't be 3K. Dortch could catch 3 balls and be fine. If he catches 3 balls for 33 yards, that's 6.3 points. It's not winning you. You're not winning it, but like that, the miss is not huge. Where he has a possibility of catching 7 footballs this weekend. If he catches 7 balls, that's 7 points without yardage or touchdowns. But I use Akins as a bring back against Jacksonville. I mean, if you think Houston is going to push them, figure out where you think Houston is going to run their offense through. There's really no other way that I can explain how to play anybody on Houston, because they're so just wild in what they do. Why Rex Burkhead is the highest priced flex play on this team. Don't know if Brandon Cooks is going to play or not. Like, you know, if he plays, fine. He's 4,800. Last game, he got 9 targets, scored a touchdown. In games that he has missed, Chris Moore has gone off. In games that he plays, Moore has more of a floor. Here's the last 2 games prior to week 16 where he didn't play. You had an 8-point and a 25-point game. They're all really high variance plays. There's no other way to look at it. They're low floor, high variance plays against Jacksonville. There really aren't many ways to look at it. You get some volume out of Royce Freeman, but like, what does Royce Freeman have left in the tank? Am I okay with no bring back against Jacksonville? I mean, you can, but ideally, what does that get you, right? So what are the paths? This is kind of how we have to talk about this, right? If you are double stacking Jacksonville, okay? Tell me all the ways that Trevor Lawrence gets you to 30 plus fantasy points. How does he get there? 30 points is a lot, okay? 30 points on DraftKings is a lot of points. In this game against Dallas, it took 42 attempts, 4 touchdowns through the air. Against Tennessee, 368 yards, 30 completions on 42 attempts. The opponent scored 34 points, 22 points. 3 touchdowns through the air, 1 on the ground. 28 fantasy points, 300-yard bonus. Opponent scored 27 points, 3 touchdowns through the air. So the question is, how does he get there? Here's a game where they blew out the Chargers, right? 3 touchdowns, 262, 25 fantasy points. Keto, thank you for the 26 months. So the question is, how do you define him getting you to 25, 30 plus fantasy points? And can he get there in a game where they throttle an opponent? He was very efficient in this game, completed 25 of 30, but like they got up huge and then they don't have to throw the ball anymore. You know, they don't have very many blowouts. So you kind of need Houston to do something offensively, right? You're going to need Houston, who has an implied team total of 19.75. They're not expected to get shut out in this game. They're expected to score around 20 points. So if they scored 2 touchdowns and 2 field goals, how did they get there? They had to move the ball. They're going to have 65 plus plays in that game, is Houston. How are they getting yards? Who is getting the completions? And how is it dragging you along? Is it possible for somebody to get 5 catches for 80 yards and a touchdown? Is it possible for somebody maybe to get 100 yards and multiple touchdowns on the other side of that game? So are there ways he could get there in the first half, like where they blow them out and nothing happens and then, you know, whatever? Sure. Somebody said, could it be a repeat, or it could be a repeat of week 5 where he didn't do anything, but like, we're not playing for that. If you're playing a quarterback in tournaments, you don't care about this outcome. This outcome is irrelevant if you're playing Trevor Lawrence stacks in tournaments. Never focus on the floor in a tournament. That's dumb, right? The floor in a tournament means absolutely nothing to us. Okay. Well, that player could fail. Yeah. If he fails, I'm going to lose. And if he has a median performance, I'm probably going to lose too. So if you're going to play a quarterback in a tournament, you're playing for the best possible outcome. And the best possible outcome from a tournament perspective is 30-ish or plus DraftKings points. If he has 28, 29, that's fine too. But like, you're playing for the 30 plus point game because you see what that looks like. 4 touchdowns, 3 touchdowns, 30 completed passes, 27 completed passes, 300-yard bonus. And when he does those things, there's got to be somebody on the other side of those things that is catching a lot of passes, that is getting a 100-yard bonus, that is scoring touchdowns, that is posting 20-point games. And as I've put in our Discord, you can see all of the methodology behind it, that your primary double stack on days where a quarterback scores 30 plus DraftKings points over the last whatever frame I did, where it was 5 years or 10 years or something like that. The primary stack averages over 85 points without the bringback. The bringback on the other team typically scores over 20 points. So you're looking at, from those 4 plays, 105 plus on average. So is only ETN viable from the Jacksonville game? I just spent like 5 minutes talking about double stacks from that game. Who do I like as a bring back against Mike White, Metcalf, or Lockett? That's kind of a coin flip. I don't like playing, like, it's a weird situation. The Jets are really hard to secondary or to bring back. They really are. ETN or Dalvin Cook this week for what? Like, I need you guys to please frame your questions so that I can properly answer them. Like, ETN is the better play. He has the higher projection and lower salary. He's also going to be way more populated than Dalvin Cook. Dalvin Cook's been just fine. What do I think about Zay Jones and Rainmakers? He's been fantastic. Do I like Cousins in DFS this week? He has bad road stats. I mean, that game has one of the higher totals. Again, how are they getting there? Is it Bear or USEC? I'm a USEC this wipe. I went with the homie 41's voice line character. I was broken English scav last wipe. And so this wipe I went, because Streets isn't the thing that it's gonna be eventually. See, now we're talking about Tarkov and not fantasy football, but like, I wanted to have friendly places on Lighthouse. I hated just getting aggroed immediately on Lighthouse. Now I'm a USEC. I can wander around without getting aggroed on in the base. The rogues won't hit me. You have Cook 1 point higher than ETN? I don't. I have Cook higher. I have Cook lower on median and ceiling projection. You think this is a week JJ has a bad game playing in the cold in Green Bay? Okay. I can't operate on stuff like that. Like, operating on narrative is hard, guys. Like, we're just kind of making stuff up at that point, you know? Like, and I'll go down those narrative streets with you guys every once in a while. We did it last week on the Anti-Tinkercast, where I said, look, here's the road that things can go in this particular situation where we have enough of a sample size, last week specifically, where New England was playing against Cincinnati, and New England is notorious for trying to defensively game plan your best option out. We're not going to let the best guy beat us. We're going to take away your favorite toy. And the best guy on Cincinnati's offense is very clearly Jamar Chase. He is the favorite toy. He is the guy that makes that engine go. So they were just not going to let him go. And we like, look, there's a possibility that if you're going to play through Cincinnati, Jamar Chase is not the play. T. Higgins is the play because of this. But like, that's a narrative that I can't really back up with math, you know? And so because I can't back that up with math, because then I just have to categorize it as, look, this is what I think could happen, but I have nothing with which to prove that. And so therefore, I can't pitch it as anything other than narrative. And it's okay to play those sorts of plays, but just stick closer to the math with those sorts of things. You know, that's the best way that I can put it. I'm looking for a tweet. I'm sure it's going to be here. I just have to find it. Underdog NFL would probably have it. James Conner seen participating in practice Friday. That's good. And here's the tweet that we're looking for. It's like a Jedi mind trick. It's not the tweet you're looking for. Here's the tweet with an appropriate GIF right under it. Antonio Gibson ruled out for week 17. That's big. And Brian Robinson Jr. Yeah, it's add another super running back to the list of players that are gonna get really high volume. Brian Robinson Jr. is 5,200 on DraftKings, coming off of a game where he got 22 carries, 3 tough matchups in a row for a running back, and his volume has been tremendous. You know, his volume really has been very good. And that's in games where Gibson was there. Last week, Gibson played 21 of 73 snaps against the Giants. Look at the box score while I'm reading you Gibson's numbers on plays and touches. Last week against San Francisco, 21 of 73 snaps. He got 8 opportunities. Against the Giants, 38 of 63 snaps. He got 9 opportunities. Against the Giants in the week before that, week 13, he played 42 of 85 snaps. This is Antonio Gibson. He had 13 opportunities. Those opportunities are gone now. Those snaps are vacated. So looking at how many snaps per game Washington has had against some very tough defenses, 73, 63, 85, 62. Expect him to get like 65 to 70 snaps in this game against Cleveland. He's going to get 20 to 25 and possibly more opportunities against an extremely attackable, let's say approachable, a very approachable defense for opposing running backs with Cleveland. He is now a cash game, very cash game viable running back, and possibly the cash game optimal running back. There is nothing behind him. There is absolutely nothing behind him. He could play 90+% of the snaps this week at 5,200. I'm very happy for Brian Robinson and his family. Great story. Horrible situation this preseason. Great story for him to have come back from it. And now gets to run. People are going to look at silly, like not silly. People are going to look at certain things like, well, you know, he only averaged 2.6 yards per carry last week. Yeah, against the 49ers. Nobody does well against them. Throw those games out. This is a spot where everybody's like, he might be far and away the number one. Like when the projections catch up to that news and rerun everything, and they reproject him, because nobody's going to project him for 90+ in terms of snaps and touches. So like maybe they'll project him for 80 or 85, right? When they reallocate and project him that high, considering that last week he got 32 of 73 snaps, less than half, 24 of 63 snaps against the Giants, 40 of 85 snaps against the Giants in week 13, and still logged that many touches and opportunities, he's gonna probably play 70+, 80+% of the snaps and maybe higher than that. And his projection is going to be through the roof at like 5,200, specifically against this Cleveland Browns defense. Crazy how the 49ers become this good over the last couple of years. I mean, defensively, they've always been solid. They might have the defensive player of the year in Bosa, possibly an MVP candidate. Thoughts on Stidham and cash? I will not be going there. You have a 29 implied point Jared Goff at 5,600. You have a $5,200 Brian Robinson Jr. You have a 3,000 Greg Dortch. It's not necessary, right? It just doesn't feel like it's a necessary thing that we have to do. Taking a quick look back now, right? Let's look back at cash game lineup with this new news. And let's see if we do that and we do this, and we do that. You have 6,000 to go. If we do this, 49ers, you have 6,600. Like the cash game lineup kind of builds itself. You could do anything. Running back, probably going to be able to fit in an $8,000 Saquon here. Wide receivers, like if you don't want to play, if you don't think that Kirk is going to play well out there, 9,500 is a lot, even though he has paid that off really well. Like Amon-Ra St. Brown, 10 targets. Still have 6,500. Who's another running back? We talked about James Conner. There, James Conner. Oh yeah, we didn't. You know who we didn't play? We didn't play ETN. You want Barkley or you want Conner? Let's go Conner in here instead of Barkley, right? So we do that. We have 7,500 for a wide receiver, and we still have him. You're still in that range, 7,500. Like tinker with this all you want. You got a lot of guys that get a lot of targets. A lot of targets. A lot of targets. You could punt off defense and go even cheaper than that. You can play whatever you want. It's a lot of targets. It's a pretty good cash game core to start with. I'm not saying that that's the optimal cash game lineup. I haven't run it through anything. I'm just eyeballing it. And that looks gross. That looks really sick. That is absolutely silly. Hold on. I want to do a thing. I don't normally do anything like this, but I'm going to totally do this right now. Let me get a picture of this. There, got a picture. I'm going to send that picture. We have a little group chat with me and Mike Clay and Secret Squirrel, Daniel Dopp. So I'm going to send them this picture. I'm going to see if they reply. Let me see if I can get them to reply. Their picture, add week 17 cash is there. Clyde Robinson even before the news. Yeah, he was a solid play before the news considering matchup and price. Now you have Gibson out and you got to bump his projection. So he was a good play before. Now he's got that. Now he's got the additional thing above that. It's entirely stupid. Saints D all the way, punt away. So like maybe you could get something else if you went away from that. Like fine. Do whatever. Hell, if you want to say, you know what, I'm fading the people saying, Kirk Cousins has not done well in Minnesota. Kirk Cousins does better indoor. However you want to frame it. The Packers defense is 2,300. You'd have even more money. Now you can afford an $8,100 wide receiver. Not that there's anybody up there that you'd want to spend on. You have to get to like 85 to get Devontae Adams. I don't know if you want him. Tyreek Hill is 89 with a backup quarterback. I don't think it's the week in cash to pay up at wide receiver. Hopefully he doesn't bust like Zeke Elliott did last night with Pollard out. Okay. Zeke had a touchdown, didn't he? For like the 9th straight game. Nurse MVP, thank you for the 3 months. In small field single entry is 3 running back a thing. You can kind of do anything that you want. You can do all of the things when it comes to small field, right? So we try to get our crowd to focus on small field single entry or small field limited entry, I'll say, like 100-man, 200-man, 50-man games, because when you focus on those sorts of games, you get yourself into better situations. You'll win more often playing against smaller fields than you will playing against larger fields, and you'll feel better about you. G. Farwell Jr., thank you very much for the 30 months. So it sounded like a great cash game week. Might be. Wilson isn't a play in cash with Whiteback. He's fine. I like Garrett Wilson a lot. I talked about him on Top Stacks yesterday. Am I weighing the possibility of a limited snap count for Jacksonville players this week? I'm not. Next week is not the only thing that matters for them. It is. They can make it as a wild card team. So next week is the only thing that mattered for Tennessee. Tennessee either wins week 18 or they go home. That is a playoff game for Tennessee. It's not necessarily a playoff game for Jacksonville. If Jacksonville wins this week, they're 8-8. It puts them in a much better position to make the playoffs as a wild card team. So they need to lock this game up. And NFL teams do not pull starters. This is not college where they start playing the red shirts 1 minute into the third quarter unless they're up 50 already. So even if they're up 30 at halftime, the starters are going to play most of the way through the third quarter, if not all the way through the third quarter. With Robinson news, does Pacheco become even more of a fade? I don't know that we're actively fading Pacheco so much as you don't have to use him. You know what I mean? Like there's other players in that range. Think of it this way. Where do you rank Pacheco this week as a ceiling play possible? Rank him on ceiling. Probability of getting to a ceiling. And what is his ceiling? And how many other players have a similar type of ceiling? I mean, Pacheco's ceiling is 25 plus. 2 touchdowns, one of them being a 50-yarder. Getting a 100-yard bonus. He's getting 15 plus opportunities a week. His ceiling is not 15. His ceiling is 25 plus. The probability of getting to that is low, but we have to deal in probabilities. We can't, it's not just yes, no. It's not binary. right? None of this stuff is ever binary. Like, you kind of have to think of those probabilities. Let's go over and do an underdog fantasy pick'em because we're here and I like doing them and they're fun. If you do not have an account over at Underdog Fantasy, definitely go get one. And when you do, use promo code ALSMIZZLE, ALSMIZZLE, all one word, gets you up to $100 first deposit bonus on the site. It basically acts as a free bet. If you deposit $100 to the site and you use my promo code, you get $100 more just added to your account that you can use kind of as a free bet on any of these things. I bet the hires because I like rooting for good football. I'm going to go higher than 1 receiving touchdown here. I'm going to go higher than 268 passing yards there. And let's go higher than 237 yards here for $50. Submit. Boom. There's my card. We'll see if we hit. You see how much time I just spent on this, right? So, like, feel free to fade my picks. If you want to play the under, if you don't think Kirk Cousins is going to throw the ball a lot, go ahead, play the under. My picks do not matter, but go have fun for yourself over on Underdog Fantasy. You don't like having 15 running backs in your pools. Yeah, this is the way it is this week. That's what I'm trying to tell you. So, like, what site is that? Underdog Fantasy, your home for best ball and pick'em, fantasy pick'em. So, like, it's just a wild week because of how many running back plays there are. You know, you got guys like here's a list of running backs for you that I think are all either in 5-box spots. Think of how deep the 5-box running back video was this week. A lot of them, right? Ramondre Stevenson, Miles Sanders, DeAndre Swift, James Conner, Travis Etienne Jr., Tyler Algier, Zonovan Knight, Christian McCaffrey, AJ Dillon, Saquon Barkley. That's 10. I haven't even mentioned, right? That leaves out Leonard Fournette, Zach Moss, Brian Robinson, Isaiah Pacheco, Ken Walker III, Alvin Kamara, Rashad White, Dalvin Cook, Jerick McKinnon. It's a lot of running backs this week at varying price points and whatnot. So play what you like. It's just one of those weeks where we have a lot of options, which typically makes it, especially on a larger slate. We've had 10-game slates the last few weeks because of the stupid Saturday games. I hate Saturdays, if you guys can't tell. I hate Thanksgiving slate. I like the slate. I have to clarify. I hate it as a content creator and I hate it as a GPP player because the smaller the slate, the less places that you have for comfort and the less ways that you can get away from the field, the less combinations that you can have. So they make for worse tournament slates. So I don't like them. You make one mistake and you can't make it up. So from a content creator's perspective, it kills my views for those weeks because when games are on, nobody's watching your stuff. So if there's a Saturday slate, my entire content collection that week gets cannibalized. I get like 70% of the views that I get on a week where Sunday is the main slate. So thank God for Sunday slates. And thank God for longer, wider 13-game slates as opposed to 10-game slates. I don't like those. So we're back to 2 weeks in a row where I get massive hits, which is what I like as a content creator. I like, you make content, you spend time, you want people to watch it. You don't want it to get cut out because, there's a whole other slate on a day where there normally is not a slate. And the larger slates are just more fun. Are the teams we know will rest players before the game is over? It is week 17. They play 18 weeks. So nobody's resting players. The team that was going to rest players was Tennessee. Thoughts on Zylstra? He's whatever. Sometimes random things happen. The week before, Brock caught a touchdown for like 50 yards. Tight end is a random thing when it comes to Detroit. Zylstra played 29 of 66 snaps last week against Carolina, caught 3 touchdowns on 29 snaps. He played 25 snaps against the Jets, got 1 target. He played 23 snaps against Minnesota, got 2 targets. Played 23 snaps against Jacksonville, got 1 target. You don't play Jacobs versus San Francisco and Stidham at quarterback. Possibly. I typically do not like playing. There are certain players that there are certain teams that I don't like playing into situation. I don't like playing pass catchers into the Jets. Don't like it. Their cornerbacks are too good and they force you to go other ways and it's somewhat random. And sometimes you can get a big touchdown catch and it works. The play just works, but most other times it does not. Also, we know that DK Metcalf is somebody that we have, people have talked about fading before against certain cornerbacks. Remember when they played New England and he had like a massive day against them? When Gilmore was guard, they had we've tried to fade him against other players, but he seems to be a matchup proof wide receiver. And then there's sometimes where just that offense, because of the way that Pete Carroll runs it, just doesn't throw the ball to him. This year, at least, he's thrown the ball to him a ton. And because they're much shorter routes, they're not just targeting him downfield. He's got way less of a boom bust component to him. He does have a smaller ceiling than he used to have because there's less splash plays, because that's just not how Geno runs an offense. And it is what it is. And I don't like playing running backs against San Francisco. There are just certain teams that I don't want to run my players into. And especially on a week where, like, okay, look, what if Jacobs has 30 fantasy points? It's not an impossibility that he does have 30 fantasy points against San Francisco. That's not the problem, right? So somebody can say, look, you said don't play Jacobs against San Francisco and he had 30 points. So you were wrong, streamer, and suck it. Like that's somebody's going to reply that if he has a big day. The problem isn't that Jacobs doesn't have that day. The problem is that you're taking the hardest route on a week where we said Ramondre Stevenson, Miles Sanders, DeAndre Swift, James Conner, Travis Etienne, Tyler Algier, Christian McCaffrey, AJ Dillon, Saquon Barkley, Brian Robinson. All of them have to fail. Every one of those needs to fail in order for the Josh Jacobs play to be viable, right? Because when you're going off the chalk in such a dramatic way, when you're playing into one of the toughest, if not the toughest, defenses in the league, for your off the chalk play to work, at least one on the chalk play has to fail. And this week there are 10. You would need 10 running backs all to fail. At least 9 of them, right? One could hit, but you'd need the other 9 to fail, that's tough. 90% fail rate for chalk is tough, So what you end up looking at is like, okay, you're being contrarian just for the sake of being contrarian. And what we try to do instead here is we want to be contrarian without being stupid, right? We want opportunities at a ceiling that would correlate with other plays that aren't just one-offs, because that one-off requires so many other things to fail, And look, I got a lot of Josh Jacobs in Rainmakers, so I clearly want Josh Jacobs to have at least 18 plus points. I want that, because that means that my lineups would do better in Rainmakers. But like in terms of regular DFS, I don't know why. I don't know why we would have to go there. It feels like just being contrarian for the sake of being contrarian. You're wondering why your Jacobs is on the floor now in Rainmakers. Yeah, because they're not going to play in the playoffs. So you have 2 weeks left. One of them against San Francisco is terrible. Just a bad situation all around. Added to the fact that they just benched Derek Carr. Kind of feels like the Raiders are about to blow it all up. Like we could get a Windhorse situation this offseason for the Raiders. Like we get, the Raiders just sat Derek Carr. I wonder why they did that. I wonder why. They could totally just sit him and then trade him this offseason and then trade Devontae Adams so they could find a taker for him, build up as many assets as they can, because they have done such a terrible job, as we highlighted on stream yesterday, of drafting the last 4 or 5 years. They just have nothing. So like you have to start over. And you play in a conference, you play in a division with the Chargers, with, baby Herbert, and the Chiefs with still baby Mahomes, that you kind of have to plan. Like, look, our window is not the next 2 years. Our window is 5 years from now. So we have to start planning for 5 years from now. Every player cares. It's not about the players. I'm talking about as a franchise now. The players only care about right now. Players care about their next contract. They're playing for their next contract. Every player is playing to get that next contract. All I got to do, make it to the next contract. That is your job as a player, because careers are short. Season-long championship. Jacobs, Algier, Williams on Detroit, Jamal, I assume, Cook on Buffalo, play 2. I would go, obviously, my simple answer is play the 2 who project the highest. I think Algier is going to be in there. I think Algier is going to be one of the 2 that projects the highest. I think that Jacobs is also going to be in that tier with him. I think that the other 2 are going to come in lower. That would be probably the 2 that you're going to play, and Jamal Williams being the 3rd one. But I think that that's going to do it for the video. I appreciate you guys being here. If you want to take a second, go to smizzle.tv/charity and donate in the last 2 days to our fundraiser for No Kid Hungry to see if we can't get another $10,000 to add a $10,000 donation from me, another match. Let's do that. I wish you guys the best of luck this weekend. Look for another video right there. He's a legend.